Next on Wildlife Emergency.
All right, let's put a new needle in here.
An abandoned fawn must be saved.
So practically the tail is off. It's just holding from two nerves.
An operation on a squirrel. And a great horned owl finds a new mother.
She acts like a great horned owl, and that shows the babies what a great horned owl is supposed to act like.
Take them on into radiology.
We've got a problem here.
Right.
We have the opportunity to give these animals a second chance.
But he's a little one.
He's a very small one.
Nice, strong heartbeat.
He's very handsome.
Wildlife, humans are a big part of the problem, and I just want to try to be part of the solution.
You need to turn her up a lot more.
You not only need to read the mind of your coworkers, you need to read the mind of your patient. 5 minutes to go before we hit 3 hours.
To save a wild animal's life and get it back into the wild, that's what it's all about.
Morning at the Wildlife Center of Virginia reveals a baby fawn.
Yeah, he's little.
This baby was discovered wandering along the side of an interstate, confused and alone. Its mother presumed dead.
So he's not very old at all.
Can you stand up?
Having gone without food for days and in a state of shock, this fawn must be immediately treated. But there are dangers in providing hands-on care, for if it begins to depend on humans, it will never be able to survive in the wild.
Everybody wants to mother an orphan deer fawn. Deer fawns are unfortunately one of the species that is most prone to being imprinted by people. And so the minute a deer fawn comes into the wildlife center here, we need to be on our guard at all times to avoid imprinting it.
Throughout the examination, Dr. Ned and vet student Rebecca speak as little as possible to prevent the fawn from becoming too comfortable with human voices.
All right, let's put a new needle in here.
Having been unable to nurse for days, the fawn must be given fluids by injection under the skin. Its eyes must be covered to reduce the stress of this new environment.
To minimize our handling time, I'm squeezing our bag of fluids here to get it into our little deer faster. She's thin and a little weak, but I'm not sure she really needs an IV put in at this point anyway. So I'm going to try to get some blood from her too, so we get an idea of if she's anemic or not, which she may be.
The site where blood will be drawn is prepped.
That'll help us find the vein.
This sample will be tested for parasites, signs of infection, and anemia.
Okay.
Over the next week, Dr. Ned will keep close watch over this little fawn to bring her through these first difficult days. The challenge will be treating her without taming her. In the intensive care ward, rehabilitation manager Amanda prepares to feed a baby squirrel who has sustained multiple injuries.
Apparently the nest had fallen, and this particular squirrel was the only one of the 5 that was injured, and part of his tail was lacerated, almost severed to the point where it's coming off, and then he had a large wound on his leg as well, and he's quite bruised also from the fall.
Pete Sim, facilities manager at the University of Virginia, where the accident occurred, is an expert on all the residents of these dormitories.
These buildings were built in the early 1800s. There are lots of bats and squirrels and snakes and possums and all sorts of other stuff that lives in these buildings, and it's not unusual to come across them when we do renovations.
When Carpenter John removed a piece of molding, the little squirrel who fell to the ground needed immediate care.
The little one that was laying on the ground?
It fell, well, all the nest, most of the nest, it fell. And I think the one that I didn't see fell on the scaffold, then fell down on the ground on the nest.
Despite the hectic restoration schedule, Pete and his workers rushed the injured animal to the Wildlife Center.
I think it's important. I mean, obviously the carpenters think it's important. I mean, they're here, and, you know, you gods, we ripped their home apart. It seemed the least we could do was to do all that we could to increase their chance of making it.
At the center, a decision was made. In order to save the baby squirrel from a fatal infection, a portion of his tail would have to be amputated.
let's turn the oxygen at 1 and ISO at 3.
Now, Dr. Julie, the center's newest intern, adjusts the anesthesia level and prepares to begin the operation.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, baby.
The age and size of this little squirrel, combined with a severe infection, make even this relatively minor surgery perilous.
So practically the tail is off. I mean, it's just all holding from by just 2 nerves. And I'm gonna cut much higher actually, because here you see there's a red area and the infection is already in there. So I'm just gonna cut above that. And it smells very bad. I mean, there's infection in there, obviously. Okay.
Because the squirrel will use its tail for balance, communication, and warmth, Dr. Julie will try to preserve as much of the appendage as possible.
I'm gonna cut between 2 vertebrae. And what you want to do as much as possible is leave more skin, leave a flap of skin to cover the end of the tail, the tip of the tail afterwards. Okay.
Once the tail has been cut, silver nitrate sticks must immediately be used to seal off the wound.
Can you go get me some surgical glue, please? The smaller the animal is, the less blood you want to lose. You can safely lose up to 10% of the body weight in blood volume. So for this guy, I don't want to lose more than about a cc of blood. That's why I don't want this thing to bleed too much. We're just gonna put some glue that will just make both flaps of skin stick together. So that's just another way to close the wound. I could have put a stitch, but it would just take too long, and I just want to reduce the time of anesthesia. Looks good to me. Okay, let's wake him up. The infection is gone. I just took it off. I'm sure it's gonna nicely heal. The only concern that I have now is just the leg, since it got worse from yesterday. So I just hope that the antibiotics will be enough to control that. And the other thing is that I'm not sure how well it will do with this shortened tail. The tail is their tail. They use it for balance. And I'm not sure how much that will affect his balance once, when it be released and be able to climb in the trees and everything. Okay, I think we'll put him back in the incubator with his little buddies. Okay. And he'll feel more secure.
The operation has concluded successfully, but the trauma this little squirrel has encountered in its first weeks of life may overwhelm it. Outside the center, this ordinary pickup, driven by rescuer Colleen Ballard, serves as an ambulance for a baby owl.
So what's the story on him, Colleen?
He fell out of the nest Monday.
He knows he's a go home.
Oh, yes.
It was a great horned owl that had been sitting at the edge of his nest trying to stretch his wings when a huge gust of wind came by, and his wings acted like a sail and blew him out of the nest, and he landed in somebody's azalea bush in front of their house.
Dr. Tracy and veterinary technician Sarah performed the initial exam.
I was just palpating for fractures, any soft tissue wounds, damaged feathers, that sort of thing. Just to make sure that everything is okay, that he didn't, when he fell out of the nest, that he didn't fracture anything.
You thought you could.
Though apparently unharmed, the little owl, estimated to be 1 to 2 weeks old, will not be able to go home.
His nest was between 60 and 80 feet off the ground, and no one had a ladder that was high enough to get him back up.
And he's not quite big enough to fly yet. Okay, got it? Just take a little bit of blood, and we'll do a complete blood count on him.
Because the owl will be staying at the center until he can be released, a complete profile on the patient must be assembled.
We want to check, make sure he's not anemic, make sure that he doesn't have any infections that he's not showing signs of. He just wants to bite me so badly. 1.06.
He may act brave, but the owlet's early separation from his parents could impair normal development. It is crucial at this stage to provide some help that Sarah and Dr. Tracy cannot provide. So they place him under the care of a mature great horned owl called Big Mama.
Gotta have this.
But first, a final treatment must be provided.
You've got parasites. You need this. Okay, there we go.
Go ahead and set him down sort of next to the group, not really with them.
And now, an important introduction to a member of its own species can be made.
We put him in with Big Mama for the first day or two to make sure that he was eating, and she did as she always has. She immediately sort of went in and sat on him and protected him.
Though she has lost her wing and can never be released, Big Mama is an excellent teacher.
She acts like a great horned owl, and that shows the babies what a great horned owl is supposed to act like, and therefore they begin to act like a great horned owl. And as they grow up, then they will learn to realize that they are great horned owls, and they'll recognize their own species when it comes time to breed and mate and that sort of thing.
With Big Mama's help, the baby will learn what being an owl is all about. If he learns his lessons well, he may yet be able to put them into practice in the wild. In the examination room, Donna and Dr. Ned perform a post-op checkup on the squirrel who fell from his nest.
Well, that's healing very nicely. It's about halfway closed.
The surgical site where the tail was amputated looks great. It's closing fine. It's actually too little. You actually really don't sew the end shut the way you might another wound, so the skin will close all by itself over the end, and it looks great.
Want to check his hydration level? He's had some diarrhea.
Though the site of the surgery is healing better than expected, other problems have emerged.
The last time I tried to feed him, he just, it was really difficult trying to get him to take anything. He kept, it almost looked like he had aspirated because he was kind of gasping, but he didn't.
Have you listened to him?
Yeah, I didn't hear him clicking earlier, but Heidi said when she did feeding previously to the one I did, it was difficult as well. He just wasn't taking much.
We'll weigh him and give him some fluids.
Even a minor illness in a baby this young can be critical, and monitoring weight fluctuations is essential.
61 grams.
How are all the rest of his littermates doing?
They seem to be doing okay. The other one that is sharing his enclosure also has diarrhea, so we have switched him back to half and half.
For this baby squirrel, overcoming a major fall and a tail amputation has not been enough. Now, if he's going to survive, he'll have to make it through a serious illness.
All right, let's get him back where it's warm.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna.
Sure.
As the baby squirrel struggles with illness, the orphan fawn attempts to adjust to life in captivity. Refusing to nurse from a bottle, it has lost weight, and tube feeding has been prescribed. Now, as Dr. Julie and Rebecca prepare to weigh the fawn, the team will see if this new feeding regimen has improved its health.
He's now at 10 pounds. Okay.
Good, so he's gained the pound back
Gained
that he
a pound
lost.
back, yes.
So he's back to where he started from.
Exactly.
Good.
It's a good sign.
That's better. We should continue tube feeding him the way we started last night.
Okay.
So let's tube feed him all through the weekend. And if he gets a little stronger, maybe after the weekend he'll start taking the bottle on his own.
I'll try that.
So let's try that.
Okay.
The bottle's over here, so we'll just need to empty the bottle. So if you want to decant the milk.
Through this procedure, which must be conducted 3 times a day, a formula is provided that is specifically tailored to meet the nutritional needs of a 4-week-old fawn. The blindfold, which shuts out sensory stimuli, keeps the animal calm while the tube is carefully inserted and assessed.
I'm listening for stomach sounds. I need to make sure that my tube is in his stomach and not in his lungs, because we wouldn't want to fill his lungs up with milk. So between listening for a cough and smelling for stomach smells and listening for stomach sounds, we know we're in the right place. And we are. So.
That's it, yeah.
Good job, Dr. Julie.
Good job, okay.
Take our tube out. Okay, Bambi. Off you go.
All right.
The fawn is moved to a new outdoor home. Though still shaky, she has responded well to the forced feeding process, and for now, All that's required is rest and fresh air. Next door, in a small flight pen, the great horned owlet has learned much from his tutor, Big Mama, the adult owl with a disabled wing.
Go.
Now, he must master something she cannot teach him, flying.
Come on, go.
Though encouraged by caretakers Iris and Heidi, it's not easy.
Let's see if we can get him off the ground. He's been down with his surrogate mom. He had 3 siblings. One sibling has already been released, so he's the next one to go.
While still struggling with the mechanics of flying, the owlet has excelled in what the center calls mouse school.
What mouse school is it's a large tub, and we put 3 mice in, and they have food and cover so that they can get under like leaves or whatever to hide from it. And he's proved to us he can kill, so that's the key thing. And he's able to eat and kill on his own, and that was the only thing he needed to do yet besides getting up his endurance, and so he's doing real good. You notice how he can drop low and then end up way out on top. Yeah. He seems he can land real well, because you notice how he would stick his talons right out and reach for the landing right before he got there. And that's what he needs to do. He needs to be right ready to land by the time he hits it.
His natural instincts begin to take over, but the final test will be the release itself. The baby squirrel, whose tail was shortened, and who then had become very sick, has recovered completely.
Last time I looked at this tail, it looked just great, and it still looks great, and he's growing hair.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a little on the stubby side,
He's a small grower.
but
He's small. They say he's a really good eater, though.
Yeah.
He seems to be able to move the tail fine.
Yeah.
What's left of it.
Over the next 7 weeks, the staff will make sure that the squirrel can adapt to his new condition.
I think his balance will be fine because he was so young when this happened. He'll adapt to being able to climb with the short tail. I was a little more worried about his thermoregulation because they'll hold him up over their backs to keep warm some. But I think he has enough that if he's given a good, safe place to live, he should be fine.
The baby squirrel has thrived. After a little more time indoors, he'll be moved to an outside cage and then released.
Back to your brothers.
Both of us corner him, and then I'll go in, make a snap.
Caretakers Heidi and Iris prepare to collect the little great horned owl, who they now feel can make it on his own. Eager now to elude humans, he tries to stay away from his teacher.
All right.
Now the rehabilitation team takes the owl to the site chosen for the release.
Good job. All right, here he is. Oh. All right, big guy. Look at that.
For the owl who lost his home at such an early age, the conditions here are an ideal welcome back to the wild.
The great horned owl will be probably king of this area by nightfall. He has a lot of fields, open fields. He has tons of trees to nest in and roost in, and hopefully a little female great horned owl will come and visit him sometime.
All right, little guy. All right, I got him.
Got him?
Yeah.
All right. Be free, little man.
All right.
Have a good life.
He's gonna be free. All right.
Go for it, Heidi.
All right. There you go, little guy. You're free. All right. All right. Look at him curving to go around.
The bird soars free, surpassing his trainer's expectations. When suddenly, an angry, menacing sound fills the valley, and the frightened bird takes cover as crows swoop down.
Diving right at him, aren't they?
Owls tend to be mobbed frequently by crows and blue jays. Owls do prey on songbird nests, and for some reason it is ingrained for generations back that the owl is the bad guy. We gotta get him, we gotta gang up on him.
Launching a preemptive strike, the birds drive the owlet into the woods.
At that point, he went into the woods, which was a really smart thing to do, and sat down on the ground and became very still and quiet, where the crows couldn't actually touch him.
Hey, little guy, look up here. Look over here.
Heidi attempts to recapture it, concerned that it may have been injured. But now, everyone is a predator. The owl hides, but the birds spot him and attack.
Finally, after he got up in a tree, I think he just overwhelmed him. And he was just, kind of dangling there. He's just waiting kind of till everything clears out so, he can have his own private spot, and just take things in. Because he really wants to, learn this area. But once night falls, he'll have the whole domain to his own self.
As the young bird has discovered, it's not easy being wild. But as night descends and the crows retire to their nest, prey may yet become predator, and predator prey.
Well, his first adventure certainly was a very big one for such a young owl, but I think that he weathered it well and he handled himself well, and hopefully in the future he will not encounter something as horrendous as this for him, and life will just be a smooth sailing from now on.
The fawn that spent weeks at the center has managed to avoid imprinting and can now be transferred to the farm of rehabilitator Robin Eastham.
Ready, guys? Come on.
Robin runs a very special facility for deer. She uses goats to provide the fawn with a nearly perfect breakfast.
Well, goat's milk is not only generally considered the universal milk in that it's easily digestible because the fat granules are so small, but it also is very similar to deer. Deer and goats are quite closely related. So their milk, the constituents are very similar.
Most importantly, this method provides a solution to the problem of imprinting by removing humans from the care and feeding of the fawn.
It enables me to keep a real distance from the deer. The deer get their milk, they get their food, they get everything from the goats. And my only association is that I bring the goats. The hazard is, it's a wild animal, a large wild animal, that needs to be terribly frightened of everything in life to survive. So when we take the natural fear away from it, we've taken away one of its major tools for survival.
The fawn, whom Robin has nicknamed Willow, was accustomed to tube and bottle feeding. So at first, such a natural source of food was daunting.
She wasn't so sure about the milk. It may be that she was very young when she was taken from her mother and spent more of her time nursing from a bottle than from a deer. You ready? Okay, here you go. Good girl.
But after a few days on Robin's farm, she's become a pro.
She doesn't get pushed around. She makes sure that she gets the nipple that she wants. If she doesn't think that this is letting enough milk down while she gives her a good bop with her head, make sure she gets enough. It's interesting that the deer, right from the first moment they arrive, are not afraid of the goats. I think the size is so similar. Really, the whole body type is very similar. It's a four-legged animal. The heads look sort of, and they're quite deer-like goats.
Outside, the baby goats take milk from a bottle so that, as farm animals, they become comfortable with human handling.
Giving the little goats the bottles, I'm ending up with very tame goats. So this way I'll have very tame goats and very wild deer, hopefully.
Once the fawn gets a little older, she'll be encouraged to mingle with the wild deer on Robin's farm.
We will start in the evening when they're old enough. We'll start opening the gate so that they can go out at night. And then in the morning, they will, if they're like the deer in the past, they'll be waiting by the gate to come back in and get their milk from Thistle.
Now, his prospects for release seem very good.
What I'm hoping for Willow is that she'll get more and more independent, and one day she'll just go off with the wild deer, and I won't be able to tell her from any of the other deer. And every time I look at the deer as I drive up my driveway, I'll say, maybe one of those is Willow.